All right. Hey guys, what's going on? It's Josh, JC Alfelto for the Writer's Lens. And today I have my seventh interview here on the Writer's Lens with a very good friend of mine, Colleen Ward. Say hello, Colleen.
Hello.
Colleen is a fellow creative, good friend of mine that I've known for, oh my gosh, we were just talking about this, a little over 10 years, I think is how long we've known each
That's
other.
kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy how time just flies. But um, Colleen is someone that I had been wanting to interview for a little while here. Like I said, she's a fellow creative, but she's also an owner operator of her own business where she does photography. And I basically wanted to give her a little bit of a platform to talk a bit about it since she kind of took this dive recently into the world of doing this thing a little bit more on the full time end of things, correct?
Yes. Big
Yes.
scary leap
Yeah, the big
into the
scary leap.
unknown.
So I think she has some good things to talk about, a good story to tell. So we'll just kind of get right into it there in that case. So aside from some of the things that we could tell about each other, incriminating stories, things like that over the past 10 years or so, um, what kind of kickstarted your passion as far as being in photography and just all things creative, I guess, Colleen?
Yeah, so I think the photography story is actually a really interesting one. I never ever thought I would be a photographer.
Hmm.
And so it came a little bit later and something that was a little bit more unexpected. But I had always grown up as the artistic kid, the one who would stay
Mm-hmm.
after school and hang out with the art teacher or do special projects or, help my friends with their homework, their art homework. Um, and I came from a very creative, or I come from a very creative family. So
Hmm.
my mom was very crafty. My brothers are also very artistic, and
Hmm.
it was always something that was very natural to me.
And you have a
So
very big family.
I do, yeah. So I have I have four siblings, and just extended family. Everybody's just they're awesome. Yeah, I love my family, being part of a big family. But I so I was always an artist,
Mm-hmm.
and in college I was studying at my art studio art was my minor, and
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't want to do it full time, or I didn't want it to be my major because I
Mm-hmm.
was okay. Well, what am I going to do as an artist? I had no idea,
Mm-hmm.
but I was an advertising major, and um, with that degree, you had to do a practicum course. And
Mm-hmm.
at that time, my options were to work for the yearbook or the newspaper. And my options within the both of those two things were to write or take pictures. And so I was like, raise my hand really high to take pictures because I thought to myself, I know what composition is as an artist. I know what looks good.
Hmm.
I'm social. I love people. So I knew that this role as a photographer would be to be at every event, taking pictures
Hmm.
and, making that happen. So I decided to do that. And as I literally, turned the camera on auto
Hmm.
and never, just showed up and did my thing. And they kept asking me to come back every semester after that.
Hmm.
And then eventually I was paid to do it.
Hmm.
So I laugh about it now because I'm like, I had no idea what I was doing, um, but it was great. Just an unexpected surprise that really led me into this career. So
Hmm.
when it came time to graduate, every senior had to do an internship, and
Hmm.
my advisor told me, Colleen, you've been doing so much photography for us. Why don't you do your internship in photography? So I said, okay, that sounds good. And met a girl who, she lived in or I went to school in southeastern Tennessee. So she lived in a place that was beautiful outside all the time.
Hmm.
She did portrait work. And so very different from photojournalism, but she did portrait work. She did families and weddings and kids and babies. And she told me how much she made that year.
Hmm.
And when she told me that, in the six figures, I was like, okay, I can do this. I'll sign up to be a photographer. So,
Excellent.
well, so that summer I bought a camera,
Hmm.
and then I moved back to Cleveland, which is not southeastern Tennessee when it comes to weather. So it proved to be very difficult with
What are
the
you
weather.
talking about? It's great here in Cleveland. It's
I know, it's
awesome.
so tropical. Um, so anyway, so yeah, so I bought a camera that first summer I was out of college,
Hmm.
and then a few months later got a position as a photographer in a studio and learned everything technically. They hired somebody who was very green. I had no idea what I was getting into, but they took a chance, and it was great, really, really great for me. So as an artist, I was always doing that, but
Hmm.
as a photographer, it really was something that fell in my lap. And then once I worked for the studio, then took a leap after that was over, and then started my own business on the side. So
That's awesome. That's
yeah,
awesome.
so it's been like, oh my goodness, it's been like 11 years of doing
Wow.
photography. Yeah. So
That that's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, so as far as I mean, I kickstarted it with photography, and you had alluded to being an artist and everything too, because we do want to touch on both these aspects of what you do, because aside from the photography, you are an amazing, amazing painter,
Oh,
an
thank you.
artist. So yeah. Um, so as far as getting inspiration for doing that kind of work, I mean, I can't draw. I'm not very good at that. I can write. Okay, that's like my bread and butter. But like I've always been really interested in how people that have that ability to just kind of look at a canvas or just look at something and go, this is what I can make. I can make
Mhm.
this look like something new, or I can emulate something. Um, how do you find inspiration for stuff like that? Is it just kind of like, oh, it came to my mind and now I'm going to do it? Or because I know there's different kinds of artists, I believe, like, hey, like I see it, I do it, and there's also ones that I've never seen this before and I do it. Like, how do you
Mhm.
work in that respect, as far as when it comes to that? It's
Yeah.
probably a pretty big question, I guess. So.
No, it's a big question, but it's a great question because I think a lot of times as artists, or at least I don't know, maybe in my genre specifically, I'm sure in writing too,
Mm-hmm.
um, you always feel like you have to be creating something new
Hmm.
and something different, and there's this pressure to do something that nobody has ever done before
Mm-hmm.
and be totally creative. And it's just so much pressure. And I read a book called Steal Like an Artist. And it
Hmm.
sounds a little like crazy, and I don't want to give away my secret potion, but I'm just saying, like, it was so freeing to me to learn that, if you look back at artists throughout history, um, they all have their own style
Mm-hmm.
and things that they do. However, they were inspired by someone else.
Hmm.
And the great classics, like Michelangelo and like those kind of painters, they were looking at something and they
Hmm.
were inspired by something. So
Hmm.
my inspiration a lot of times comes from just looking at other people's work and
Hmm.
either saying, oh, I could do that. And then it totally does not turn out anything like what that person did. Um, or just experimenting.
Hmm.
There's a lot of people, I follow a lot of people on Instagram that are different than me,
Hmm.
because I want to continue growing and learning because I
Hmm.
get bored with, some like doing a certain thing too long. So I always want to be learning and growing. So there's a lot of people on Instagram. And then I would say, as far as photography goes, my biggest, um, my biggest inspiration was Jeremy Cowart. He's
Hmm.
a famous photographer in Nashville,
Hmm.
and he's just an amazing human being. And I've met him twice. He's just incredible human. Really, he is a photographer, but is also just a big dreamer and
Hmm.
thinker.
Hmm.
And, I think especially when I get out of college, there was this crazy amount of pressure again
Yeah.
to pick a career that I
Hmm.
want to do the rest of my life.
Yep.
And with Jeremy, his story is really amazing and he documented it. And there's a great video on his website about his journey and where he's going.
Hmm.
It's really cool to see how our gifts and everything take us to different places.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been a huge inspiration of mine, and just some really great nuggets of truth, I guess.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then I think as far as a business person, my brother has been really inspiring to me, just pushing me to try new things and not be scared, and to learn the things that are hard, that don't come naturally to me. He's saying, these are things that you've got to do, or he's also the person that I can send a picture of a painting that I'm working on because I'm frustrated at where it's at. And he'd be like, all right, Colleen, it's time to walk away. Like, it doesn't look good right now, walk away. Or looks great, keep going. I remember recently I did a painting it was a commission piece, and it was a 2-panel piece. And I asked him what he thought of it. And he's like, Colleen, make me want to buy the left side. And it just pushed me, and so he's always been that kind of person in my life. So he's been inspiring because he's also an artist himself. So
no kidding.
It's been really helpful to have him.
That's really cool. There was a couple of really good things there you were talking about that I wanted to almost unpack if possible. But like you were saying about just the journey of having to pick a career, for instance, for the rest of your life. And I just feel like that's such a common thing that we hear, especially for like our generation, now that, the average, I think we were just talking about this before we even started this interview was, how long have we been doing certain jobs in our life, and either having fear of doing something that we're really passionate about, or doing something else that, is just paying the bills or something like that. So like you said, there is also this pressure aside from picking something that you're passionate about, as well as something that is going to be able to provide for you, and be able to provide what you're doing. So I thought that's a really good nugget there, because that is something, as being a creative person, you have to wrestle with. I mean, you're just constantly wrestling with it. I also thought it was interesting how you said drawing inspiration from people that are different from you. To me, that's so fascinating, because as a writer, I can't read people's work that's so different than mine, because I feel like it messes with my head, and I don't know.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like, for instance, I'll give you a real quick example. Cormac McCarthy is a writer who's done a couple of old Western style books. He wrote, I think it was, Blood Meridian. I'm not sure if that's the right name for it, but his style is so different than mine. And I read one of his books a while back, and I remember sitting down trying to write something, and I started writing like him, and it totally messed with my head. I just couldn't do it. And I just went, no, I have to put this guy down. He was clashing with my style, I guess is the way to put it. Very impressive imagery that he could do, but as far as his style, it kind of was like, oh my gosh. So I think that's really interesting as an artist, that you can borrow from someone that's very different from you.
Yeah, I think it's really important to do it because it makes you better. I mean, I know that there was a time that I actually studied with another artist, and I found that when in that period of my life, it was really only a matter of, I think it was maybe a year, maybe a full year, but my paintings started to look like her paintings.
Yeah.
And it was it wasn't my style. It wasn't what I liked. I mean, I was happy to sell them, but it wasn't where I was headed. But I think it's funny because when you think back to other, when you read about artists and things like that, you can pinpoint times in their life when they were an apprentice of someone's, because their work becomes like who they're trying to mimic. So I think it is important to do that, because you really do find your lane that you're headed in, and you get to experiment with other types of, in my case, artwork, in your case, writing. And you know what? Now that you did that, you can identify it's easier to
Hmm.
identify what your style is too. So, and then the other thing I wanted to mention too is that surrounding myself with people that are different than me also involves surrounding yourself with people that have strengths that are different than yours.
Hmm.
So,
Because that is different. That is different than
it
just
is
surrounding
very,
yourself that are different than you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, because, as an entrepreneur, it is unbelievable the pressure when you feel like you have to know everything when it
Hmm.
comes to owning a business. And Lord knows I do not know everything. And it has been really difficult, to um, to just kind of jump into this with little to no knowledge of certain things, and
Hmm.
then and have to teach yourself, and you feel like you have to be good at it. But
Hmm.
once you surround yourself with people who are strong in certain things like, taxes
Hmm.
and business laws and all those kind
Hmm.
of things. I don't know anything about that. I wish I was a numbers person, but I'm not. So you have to surround yourself with people that are different. But
Hmm.
yeah, they are two different, very different things. But I meant both of them.
That's really good. I think that's one thing too. When I first started out, that I had no clue about, like surrounding myself with people that could do things other than create content.
Yes.
Like someone that could tell you how to market this thing. Like once you're finished with it, someone that could tell you, what's the best practice for how to price the thing.
Yep.
Or venues you could put it up at. Like,
Hmm.
whoa, you don't even think you're so tunnel vision. I think sometimes as an artist, you're just like, I can't do all these things, and which is interesting now. And this is kind of leading into my next question, which is interesting now because with the onset of the internet and social media and the ability to have your hand in so many different pots, being an entrepreneur, I feel like you almost have to wear like 12 different hats
Hmm.
just to be able to have a grasp on the marketplace. I mean, do you feel that kind of pressure as well? Just, or maybe not as much, or I'm not, I guess that would be my question.
No, yeah. I mean, that's a very good question. Of course. Yeah. I do feel like you've I mean, you have to know a little bit about everything as
Mm-hmm.
an entrepreneur, and you have to, I'm not saying that I can write the book on it, but I'm just saying, like, it has been just an eye-opening experience to what I don't know
Mm-hmm.
and how much I want to know and how much I want to learn. But
Mm-hmm.
balancing those hats, or wearing all those different hats,
Mm-hmm.
is overwhelming, but extremely life giving,
Mm-hmm.
because while you feel like I told somebody when I took the leap that it's different because I feel like everything I do now is my own. Before you went to work and you had a boss and you had to
Mm-hmm.
answer to that person and those kind of things. Now I'm working at 10 o'clock at night. I'm thinking about work all the time, but it's not the same feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be good about resting and building in time to not wear all those hats and say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, whew, if I don't take a minute to not be this person, then
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna fail. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
No, that's actually great because that was my very next question, which was, it's almost like this is scripted, Colleen. I just,
uh-oh.
um, I think I can speak for a lot of writers out there or just artists in general, how sometimes I feel like I get in the mode and I have to get something done. Like I just forget the clock. I'm going to get it done. So when you were talking about making time for rest, it almost seems like that's something that I don't want to say it's frowned upon, but it's almost like you shouldn't be setting out time for that if you're an entrepreneur. Like that almost seems like to be the unspoken rule because like I see memes about it all the time. Like the moments that you're resting, someone else isn't, right? Like you just
Yeah,
you kind of get this sense of, oh, I have to keep doing this, and it almost creates a really unhealthy level of anxiety
sure.
uh, about getting something done or finishing that passion project. So um, when did you find out as far as giving yourself time for rest? I mean, was it just something you come across naturally? Was there somebody who said, hey, Colleen, take a breather? Or was it just like, look, I'm savvy enough to realize that I need to work rest into my schedule as well. I
I'm
mean,
definitely not savvy enough to know that. I mean, I think it's been a number of times where I've felt burned out. You
hmm,
know, I worked as a marketing professional for one company for 7 years, and
hmm,
well, I had different roles there, but I was at one company for 7 years while balancing a business
hmm,
on top of that.
hmm,
And there were many times where I felt burned out and
hmm,
the work was piling up. And so taking time to just relax
hmm,
felt like I was failing and all those things. So you get to this point where you have to build it in because if you think about it, you know, if my tank isn't filled, I can't give anything. You know,
hmm,
if I'm not putting anything into it, there's nothing I can pour out. So
hmm,
um, it's just important to, you know, try to step away and clear your mind
hmm.
and and really make time for people and your brain just to relax a little bit because it's very easy. It's very, very easy to get caught up, especially when it's your life.
Hmm.
You know, a lot of times I know there's a book that I am not going to remember the name of the book. It was I'm not going to remember it, but they say, you know, when you go from a full-time job and you
Hmm.
take the leap into being an entrepreneur or starting your own business,
Hmm.
you're used to walking in the door every day to a boss and you have to answer to people, you have deadlines and you have all these things. And when you take the step into owning your own business, you may not have a boss anymore, but you have a mortgage payment
Hmm.
and you have deadlines, you have a phone bill, and you have
Hmm.
all of these things that you have to answer to.
Hmm.
Those things become your boss, you know?
Yeah.
So it's, you know, so
Yeah.
it's hard. It's really hard work, and it's all about perspective. And if you're not taking time for yourself, then
Hmm.
you're just gonna burn out.
Yeah. I can definitely attest to that. And just just feeling that pressure and then having to realize that you got to take time just for rest. I mean, it's imperative. It absolutely is. So that was some really good stuff there. So very, very good stuff. Now, as far as now, I know that you do venues and where you'll put your art on display and everything. And you know, I am also, my wife and I are happy customers of yours, as you know.
Yeah.
um, so what about? I mean, now you're kind of at a point now where you have your own studio and you have your stuff. It's out there. People know about you. What about those days and times when you maybe were first starting out and you were like, I don't know if I should charge people for this. Should I give it away for free? Am I, did you ever have any of that tension as far as, is it more important that I'm just doing this right now and it's just fun for me instead of thinking of it like a business? Or were you always in this like bigger picture mindset? Like this was going to go to something and I was going to have this studio?
I love this question
Mm-hmm.
because I actually coach people on this now.
Hmm.
I talk to other photographers, specifically photographers. Art's a little bit of a different story, and I'm still trying to learn that. But I don't know exactly who it was that I spoke to about the value of your time
Hmm.
and the value of your experience.
Hmm.
But when I have photographers talking to me about wanting to start their own business, it's easy to be like, oh, I'll take some quick photos of your baby. Sure, no problem. I need to get experience. And those things are great. And you really
Hmm.
do need to do that. I did that in college.
Hmm.
But then you start realizing like, hey, I'm pretty good at this.
Hmm.
And people are going to take free things all day long.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh
So,
yeah.
but what happens is if you don't put a value on your product or service,
Hmm.
people are not going to value it.
Hmm. Yep.
So, so, I could give away photography sessions all day,
Hmm.
but but then people wouldn't really value it and they wouldn't see, does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally
I
makes
feel,
sense.
yeah, I feel like even with artwork, artwork's a great example too. If I were to put a painting of mine in a venue and put $5 on it, it could sit there forever because of that $5 doesn't make it worth anything, doesn't make it valuable at all. But I
Mm-hmm.
could put $5,000 and that thing would fly out the door because
Mm.
people are like, oh my goodness, this is a local artist and this is valuable. She must be known.
Yep.
It's really amazing how people react
Hmm.
to how you put value on yourself. And
Hmm.
your time is important. Your experience is important. And it's amazing how other creatives that I've experienced, they start listening and they'll start doing that, and then they become more profitable and people take them seriously.
Hmm.
So there was a point in time where I would give things away for free, but it wasn't for long.
Hmm. Yeah.
I know I did my first wedding for $300. So I remember that being like, I think I told the bride 6 or 7 times, like, okay, are you sure this is my first wedding? And I felt bad about taking $300, but
But that's really
yeah.
good though too. Like just the fact that you said I felt bad about it because you
Mhm.
didn't feel like you were experienced enough yet, and you're just
Yeah.
like, I don't know if I can bring to you your expectation. Like whatever your
Yes.
expectation is, I don't know if I can meet that, and
So,
and I'm not sure if you're gonna value what I do. So
mhm.
is it really worth $300? And it's funny how, like you were saying, as you get more experience and as you start doing it more, then you should be in the mindset of, okay, I can start charging more for this, or I can charge what I think I'm worth, and
Mhm.
kind of navigate that too. That's
Yeah.
actually awesome. I was
Yeah, a
on
lot of that has to do with confidence, right?
mm-hmm,
So, I think being an adult, a lot of being an adult, and I'm learning this in my new venture, is that a lot of it is fake it till you make it.
yeah,
I mean, thank God we have Google,
yeah,
right? So if we didn't have Google, like there would be so many things that I
oh.
mean, I'd be like calling my mom probably every 5 minutes, like, what can I do? But you fake it till you make it. You
mm,
walk forward as
mm,
a confident person.
mm-hmm,
And, I always think about people who get to sneak into those big like award ceremonies and shows
mm-hmm,
because they walk in with confidence and people don't ask questions.
yeah,
And so I think sometimes we have to approach business like that. This could be like terrible advice, so I don't I don't want to say it, but I'm just saying like sometimes we have to approach different situations like that because we may be the smartest person in the room.
mm-hmm, yeah.
So,
I think that's actually excellent advice. Um, and it's interesting too, like I said, coming from more of a writing background like myself, because this idea of giving things away for free, at least in the beginning, actually has benefited a lot of long-term writers, because
hmm
it's almost like if you're providing content that is written to someone, the idea of charging for it right away is almost like a complete turnoff. It's weird how that is. It's almost like, well, yeah, I could read this in a blog somewhere for free, on my computer. Why would I pay for this when I could read this anywhere? So, like you said, knowing that you're bringing something of worth is super super important. That you don't just think you're another voice or an artist or a photographer in a vacuum that anybody could just pick out of and just say, okay, I'll just pick you because maybe you're the cheapest, or maybe you're just, Aunt Susan's cousin's nephew or niece or something like that, and we have to hire you to do this. So that's really good. That's actually really, really good. Um, on that note then, as we're kind of wrapping things up here, my last question for you then would be, what would be your advice then for anyone thinking of starting out on his or her own, and they want to start like a venture like this, and they want to get out into the world and do something like that?
hmm Yeah, I think that I would encourage anybody to just try.
Hmm.
We are in a day and age where social media can take people anywhere.
Mm.
I mean, I think it's pretty amazing actually. I've seen many people be extremely successful just from using social media, but I would say just try.
Mm.
You never ever know if you don't try. And I'd much rather be the person at the end of my life saying, "Hey, remember when I tried and I was terrible at that?" than than saying, "Oh, I could have done that, or I could have that would have been nice if I tried that."
Mm.
Um, because even if you fail, you're going to learn something.
Mhm.
Um, you know, there one of the things that we were going to talk about possibly was our failures and how do you
Mhm.
work through your failures, and I kept thinking to myself, okay, what are some of my big failures? And not to sound like I don't fail, because that is not the truth,
Mhm.
but you have to have a good perspective when you're doing something like this, because every opportunity or every situation that you're in, or every failure, or every thing that doesn't work out is a learning opportunity, and
Mhm.
makes you better at what you're doing, and really just gives you experience. So I would say try. I would
Mhm.
tell anybody to just try, and if they have a good idea, to work at it.
Mhm.
Um, you don't have to quit your job. You can do things on the side
Mhm.
and see how people react, and don't be afraid. And like I said, fake it till you make it. I think that's it's like my motto this year. Just trying anything, and surround yourself with really good people.
Mm.
Surround yourself with people who are not like you,
Mm.
and pull from different places to be inspired. That's what
That's
I would
really
say.
good. I mean, that's really good stuff, Colleen. I mean, as far as like I like the fact that you're talking about community, having a community,
Mhm.
because there is such a sort of a lonely aspect of being an entrepreneur, because you can just there. I think it can borderline on being prideful as well, as like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to show everybody that I can do this. And
Mhm.
in a weird way, it's almost like a false sense of, yeah, it's prideful, but it's also a false sense of really overvaluing yourself. And if you do that too much, then, I mean, falling flat on your face could be even worse, especially if it doesn't go so well or
Yeah,
when.
exactly.
but I think that having that perspective, like you said, is really, really imperative for someone, because I think some people might fall into success accidentally, but whether or not they want to stay there is if they do have that long-term perspective.
Mhm.
If I do have that long-term perspective to stay there. And and you did mention the thing about failure and whatnot. I guess before we go then, since we were touching on starting out and trying and, just dealing with failure, I'll ask one little follow-up question then, as far as as far as dealing with failure and things that maybe don't go as expected. I think, me personally, it could be anybody, but being someone's in the field of creativity and writing stories and putting things out there that are your own, and knowing that people are going to judge you for it, failure can feel like getting stabbed in the heart or something. I mean, not in a literal sense, but you understand what I'm trying to get at. How do you? I think you touched on community, but is there anything else along with that you would say you've learned, or is there anything else you'd want to add to that aspect of just even businessing, or in a business, or being an entrepreneur, or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's you have, again, when it comes back to perspective, you have to understand that you are going to fail.
Hmm.
And you know I mean, I don't have an exact quote for you, but there are all types of business quotes that say, it's 1,000 times failing to succeed once.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I mean, it just brings so much experience and knowledge to your craft, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I could put I could put photo or paintings up on the wall and think that they're amazing and that I killed it, and I'm gonna go into a gallery and I'm gonna sell and I'm gonna bring thousands of dollars home and I'll never have to work again, or I don't know, but I'm getting really crazy now. But I come home with nothing, and it feels like a failure, but you walk away from that experience saying, okay, well, what type of people were at my event? Like, was I
Mm.
targeting the right, was it in the right of, was it in the right space? So you walk away from those things. Yeah, sure. Discouraged and, oh, I've got to try this again. But you have to have a perspective that you're going to take those moments and then reevaluate and then try again,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and try something different. So, and then as far as photography goes, I know for me, there's times where I've missed really important moments, especially with like weddings and things like that.
Mm.
Early on, I missed some important moments, and you walk away thinking, oh my goodness, I'm the worst. I'm the worst. But you know what? It has made me better moving forward because I will never, ever forget it again.
Mm.
So I think it's, again, I keep saying perspective, but understanding that failure will happen and walking away from it, not, you could be discouraged for a few minutes, but
Mm-hmm.
picking up the pieces and understanding what you learn from it and keep moving forward.
That's
I think
excellent.
that's advice. Yeah.
That's excellent. That's really good stuff. Well, on that note, was anything else I guess you wanted to say as far as, do you have any like venues coming up soon, or was there anything that you're going to be doing?
I don't have anything coming up soon. I'm working on a big project
Mm-hmm.
with some professionals here in Cleveland for some of my artwork. So
Mm-hmm.
right now, if you wanted to check out my website, it's just ColleenWardStudio.com.
Mm-hmm.
So there's information there about custom artwork or my photography services.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm just kind of, this whole journey for me into full time as an entrepreneur has really been exploratory,
Mm.
just trying to figure out which lane I want to go in, because I do feel like God's kind of given me multiple talents, and I want to keep doing all of them. So just trying to explore and what's going to be moving forward. But I'm always doing something.
Mm-hmm.
So
You're a busy gal.
I try to keep my website as up to date as possible. But
Oh, it's
yeah,
awesome. It's very well done, actually. For
thank you.
anyone listening, it is a very well polished website. So
Oh, thanks.
you're not just scrolling into like a really old RSS feed or something or whatever. Those like really old DOS like website or whatever they were back in the day. So awesome. Well, thanks again, Colleen, for being on the Writer's Lens. Appreciate just all the conversation and catching up with you, of course. So again, you can check her out, ColleenWardStudio.com, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Awesome. Thanks again, Colleen.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.